Welcome to the I Choose Health podcast. I'm your host, Stefan Lessie. This week, we have functional health practitioner Falyn Morningstar joining us on the show. Here today is health updates. Reporting in environmental health perspectives, the researchers identified a total of 921 chemicals that could promote the development of breast cancer. 90% of the chemicals are ones that people are commonly exposed to in consumer products, food and drink, pesticides, medications, and workplaces. A breakdown of the list revealed 278 chemicals that cause mammary tumors in animals. More than half of the chemicals cause cells to make more estrogen or progesterone, and about a third activate the estrogen receptor. Breast cancer is a hormonal disease, so the fact that so many chemicals can alter estrogen and progesterone is concerning, says Kay. Since damage to DNA can also trigger cancer, the researchers searched additional databases and found 420 of the chemicals on their list both damage DNA and alter hormones, which can make them riskier. What more, the team's analysis found that chemicals that cause mammary tumors in animals are more likely to have the DNA damaging and hormone disrupting characteristics than ones that don't. Historically, chemicals that cause mammary tumors in animals were seen as the best predictor of whether they might cause breast cancer in humans, says co-author Ruth Ann Rodell, Director of Research at Silent Spring. But animal studies are expensive and time-consuming, which is why so many chemicals have not been tested. Our findings show that screening chemicals for these hormonal traits could be an effective strategy for flagging potential breast carcinogens. A new study published in RMD Open reports that early menopause before the age of 45, hormone replacement therapy, or HRT, and having at least 4 children are among the risk factors associated with a greater risk for developing rheumatoid arthritis. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention explains that rheumatoid arthritis is an autoimmune inflammatory disease in which the body begins to mistakenly attack the joints, causing pain and swelling. This inflammatory reaction can lead to tissue damage and deformity over time. The study authors note that it is not clear why hormones and reproduction may play a role in this disease. However, they do state that women are more likely than men to have rheumatoid arthritis. In fact, women under the age of 50 are 4 to 5 times more likely to have rheumatoid arthritis than men are. When women reach the age of 60 to 70, they still have double the risk of their male counterparts. It is estimated that up to 2/3 of pregnant people reach for a bottle of acetaminophen sold under the brand name Tylenol when they are in pain. The drug is generally thought of as the safest painkiller for those who are expecting a child. However, a new study published in a Journal of Pediatric Research suggests that frequent acetaminophen use could lead to language delays among young children. Researchers from the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign looked at a cohort of 532 newborns. They collected language data at 2 years of age for 298 of them and 3 years of age for 254 of them. During pregnancy, mothers were quizzed every 4 to 6 weeks about their acetaminophen use and again 24 hours after giving birth. Based on these evaluations, the researchers reported that acetaminophen in the second and third trimesters was linked to meaningful delays in early language development, according to a university press release. Furthermore, each additional use of acetaminophen in the third trimester appeared to correlate with 2 fewer words in 2-year-olds' vocabulary. This suggests that if a pregnant person took acetaminophen 13 times or once per week during the third trimester of that pregnancy, their child may express 26 fewer words at age 2 than other children that age. Megan Woodbury, PhD, a graduate research assistant at a university and a lead study author, said in the press release. Is something interfering with your happiness or preventing you from achieving your goals? There is definitely something keeping me from my happiness and accomplishing my goals. I needed to take stock of my depression and consistent negative self-talk. Therapy helped me realize that I was deserving of happiness. That's why this podcast is called I Choose Health. It was about me choosing happiness, and I wanted to share that with you. That's why I wanted to and have partnered with BetterHelp as a sponsor to share the gift of therapy with you. Over 4 million people have used BetterHelp to start living a healthier, happier life. People spend hours in the gym every week, so why not give your mind the same kind of attention? Starting therapy can be hard. The right therapist for you may not be in your area, and some people find the face-to-face interaction of therapy uncomfortable. With BetterHelp, you can have your therapy sessions as a phone call, as a video chat, or even via messaging if you prefer that. Whatever is the most comfortable version of therapy for you. BetterHelp can match you to one of over 30,000 therapists in their network, which gives you access to a wider range of expertise that may be available in your area. To get started, you fill out a questionnaire to help assess your specific needs, and then you'll get matched with your therapist, in most cases within 48 hours or less. You'll be able to schedule therapy sessions at a time that's convenient for you. If the therapist you're first matched with doesn't feel like the right fit, which can be common when starting therapy, you can easily switch to a new therapist at no additional cost without stressing about insurance, who's in your network, or anything like that. If you think you might benefit from therapy, consider BetterHelp. Click the link in the description or visit betterhelp.com/iChooseHealth for 10% off your first month with a licensed therapist. All right, guys, welcome back to the I Choose Health podcast. I'm your host, Stefan Lessie. We have a great interview for you today and someone who's going to really delve into the issues of functional health and particularly in regards to women's health. But before we get into that, I really want to wish you guys a happy new year. It's 2024. You have maybe new goals, new health aspirations, and it's really vital that we don't take our health for granted. I'll tell you that my 2024 has been interesting. It started with me being sick, then having someone crash into my car. So now I'm trying to get around, by public transportation. But in it all, I'm still trying to keep a healthy perspective of seeing these things as, blessings here or there, and that they're just inconveniences. They're not a bad thing that, we usually group them with, like death. And it's just things that are slowing down time, maybe giving us an opportunity to reevaluate and see things in a different light. So with that said, I hope you guys have had a great start to your 2024. And I'm really excited to speak to our guest today. And this month in particular, I really wanted to focus a lot, particularly on women's health. As a personal trainer, it's often neglected. 60% of all personal training clients are usually women. A lot of the structuring and programming within the personal training field doesn't specifically look at those issues that pertain to women. And I think that there should be, more specific, more specified programming towards women's issues. And so, I really want to get the ball rolling here. Like this is just the first of a few podcasts like that. I've been reaching out to a lot of people in this field and, they're really interested. Some are really busy. So they're really, getting the ball rolling, doing the work in this field as well. So the person that we have today, she's a functional health practitioner, someone that knows from her own experience how vital it is to really pay attention to the issues that affect women and, the way that she goes about it, really helping women to reconnect with themselves, helping them to see that, whatever they're going through is okay to go through that. And, she's there to really help you see where your health is at and where you can move forward to, right? Like, we need to understand and remember that everything in life doesn't always, there's always going to be change. So if there's something negative going on in your life right now, do know that there is an opportunity for there to be a change and a progress in the right direction. So without further ado, I want to invite functional health practitioner Falyn Morningstar to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on here. It's a blessing to be talking about this topic, and I think it is for lack of a better term, it's very cool that you were talking about women's health, being a certified personal trainer yourself. So happy to be here and to get into the conversation.
And can you give us a background, like what led you into this field of functional health? Maybe share your personal experience. What was the motivation that, made you say like, hey, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. This is where I want to serve for the rest of my life.
To go into a little bit of my background, I actually started in the physical health space. So I would be going to the gym and learning different bodybuilding techniques. So for the first 2 to 3 years of a consistent exercise routine, I would be in the gym, I'd be weightlifting, and occasionally I'd be doing a type of CrossFit here and there. I didn't really dabble in that too much, no like clean and jerks or anything like that, but kind of in a CrossFit facility. However, I fell in love with the transformation I was seeing in my physical self and in my confidence. And in addition to training about 6 days a week, certainly didn't start that many days a week, but it built up to that. And I was able to sustainably recover and continue to move forward in whether that be more reps or more weight. And it was beautiful to see my physique transform. I did not ever compete in a bodybuilding competition. However, I did kind of shift some of my training style, and I did a couple of powerlifting meets to kind of change things up in my routine, and it definitely built strength. However, I noticed that as the years went on, I was not recovering as easily as what I had been before. I probably, the whole duration during that time, I was working full-time. I was going to graduate school part-time. I also became a certified personal trainer in 2019, I want to say, and I would train just friends, some clients here and there. However, my full-time was in local government. And so after I noticed some of these changes in my body being great, there's these little messengers that were coming through my physical body of, I'm having some bloating here, or I'm having gas. I'm not sleeping as well as what I used to. I seem to be emotionally eating, and certainly that's not serving me. Blood sugar dysregulation stuff came on. So at that time also, I was on the hormonal birth control pill. And I was very much into the personal development space at that time. And so I would be listening to podcasts. And there was one where Dr. Jolene Brighton and David Asprey had a conversation about the birth control pill. I listened to that and I said, wow, I have to buy the book that Dr. Jolene Brighton wrote called Beyond the Pill. It was extremely eye-opening of how much my health is being impacted by this little tiny pill that I had been taking since I was 16 all the way up to age 26. So a decade's worth of use, getting this fortified iron, this mineral depletion of magnesium, of B vitamins, this estrogen, this synthetic estrogen every single day for 10 years, and having that be from age 16, pivotal time that our reproductive system is coming up to womanhood. And that was playing into the symptoms I had mentioned I began to experience. I had decided to stop taking the pill, and I felt like my symptoms exacerbated a bit because my body was like, what are we doing here? Like, this is not the same. So I saw my family physician. I saw my gynecologist within roughly a month or two of experiencing all these compounding symptoms. I said, wow, I have to do something. I remember walking home from the gym because I lived in town at the time, feeling lightheaded and bad fatigue, very bad fatigue. So I spoke with them, and at this time I knew about health, but it was almost like it was a lens of bodybuilding health. I was taking pre-workout, protein supplement, powders, muscle pump enhancers, etc. And I was eating the right macros, carbs, proteins, and fats. However, I was having all these symptoms, so clearly I wasn't doing something correctly. I only mentioned to them, I think something is going on with my hormones. I'm not sure what it is. These are all of my symptoms. Unfortunately, the physician said, well, you look much better than a lot of the people around here. You look fine on the outside for your age, blah, blah, blah. And if you want to run some of your hormones, like we could do maybe 1 or 2 hormones and testosterone, estrogen, and they would be about $100 per hormone. And I didn't feel like that resonated with me. So I don't think I ever went back to him. But it was a terrible taste in my mouth. My gynecologist, I shared with her, I had stopped taking the birth control pill. And I had been seeing this woman on a yearly basis for my annual checkup since I was 16. And I've mentioned this before on different podcasts. She said to me, well, what contraceptive would you like to be on next? I'm like, well, none. I would not, none. And I really felt angry because clearly she's not there to help me. And I'm not saying all physicians, all gynecologists are like this. However, they are doing the best that they can with what they've been taught. And I think there's a point in time where you know deep down in your heart that this is not the direction you want to go. Like clearly there's something off here. And that was the point where I dove into functional health. And thankfully, 2 years prior to that, I had gone on a personal development retreat where I met a person that was a functional health practitioner. So it was interesting that 2 years later, this came back around. And I had a friend going through some testing, those being a hormone, stool, and a food sensitivity test. And at that time, I was really intrigued because I said, I just want some relief from these symptoms. Clearly, there's something wrong. Nobody's validating my symptoms. Am I crazy? Like, what is going on? Does everybody feel like these symptoms? So I actually went through the test myself, and it was very eye-opening of how much hidden stressors there were to then create a healing protocol to actually address them. It was very validating. I felt supported. I changed a lot of my lifestyle because clearly I was overstressed. As you said, I was doing all the things. I was very much in a go, go, go personality and very much in my masculine frame. I didn't really have a concept of emotions or femininity or anything like that. And so it was intriguing to me because I love the data and how the tests can really support a person to heal. And from that, it's almost like when we change our lifestyle, when we also incorporate these periods of pausing throughout the day, of meditation, of these mindfulness practices, you begin to see differently in how you want to lead your life. And so I think it was 6 months into me working with a practitioner and really getting some relief, I was able to then make the decision to say, I want to make a career change. And I'm going to go forward and get a certification, which ended up taking me about a year to get. But that is how I became a functional health practitioner. And so it's just kind of grew from there. My education, and as far as like the emotional side to women's health, they're just human beings. And yeah.
That's really helpful because like when you said just taking that pause and, especially if you're within Western society and particularly in America, we're so conditioned we have to keep going. We have to do this to provide for our family, to, keep our lifestyle up. And you took that moment to just take a pause and to really reevaluate everything in your life, reevaluate a career change. And I think this is how our system is really structured in such a way that, like, hey, everything is kind of connected to your work. And it's like, hey, you have an ailment or sickness, like take a pill, like, and just go on. Just fight through it. Take some ibuprofen at a high dosage, and it's going to help you with the pain. And a lot of times we don't take that time to really take a step back, to really re-examine our bodies, to really reconnect with nature. And I think that's so vital because, we're really an over-medicated society. We're really focused on a pill to fix this, a pill to fix that. And, we don't really like the process. And I really found it interesting that you mentioned that word, pause, taking that moment to just, slow down. And like maybe speak to and address some of the issues that you typically see with a lot of your clients. What are things that you see with a lot of women that require your services or require your help?
Great question. I see a lot of women in their masculinity, and rightfully so. I feel like we attract what we are. I was very much in my masculine, and to kind of describe what that means is very structured, very rigid. It's almost like you are working out or weightlifting to build this shield up, put this wall up of protection because you've been hurt before. And it doesn't work well when you are at it, like when you have a feminine core. It is almost just it is a beautiful protective mechanism. However, there's a point where you have to make a decision of, is that actually serving me? I think there are times when women should be in their masculine. We have both of these energies. However, which one are you leading with? And I think I was very leading with my masculine. And I was taken down more or less because I was having all of these symptoms come up. And I really had to reevaluate how I was doing things. So the women that come to me are very much in a similar position. They are experiencing anxiety. They're experiencing digestive discomfort, whether that be irregularities with their bowel movements like constipation or diarrhea. They are experiencing this overwhelm or just this unfulfillment, like they cannot fully express themselves. They feel concerned with using their voice because I think society or their family dynamic didn't really encourage women to express themselves or to just be this good girl and follow this structure. And I think it comes to a point where you're like, is that actually my true self and how I want to be in this world? And I'm a huge proponent of, we only get this one physical experience here. So it's almost like, what is it that you want to express, that you want to do? And I think through the work that I do with women, it really validates their symptoms. I think sometimes maybe in the medical field or just in life, we don't feel validated for our feelings. We don't feel validated for these health symptoms that might be coming up. They are not normal, but I think because a lot of people experience them, we've just labeled them as normal. Because like majority is experiencing anxiety. It's a normal thing. And I feel like there is so much to explore on a deeper level of why your body is functioning the way that it is. And we know that all our body wants to do is to survive. So these symptoms that are coming up, whether it be mental health symptoms or physical symptoms, they are messengers for us to look a little bit deeper. And that is what I'm here to guide women to do. And I think it is amazing when women want to figure things out and not take the easy road of taking a pill or taking a supplement. Because I've gone down the road of making sure my diet is tightened up, making sure my rest hygiene is on point, my exercise routine is supportive, and I'm meditating every day, whether that's 10 minutes, whether that's 20 minutes, whatever. And then natural supplementation. It's almost like I have relied on these lifestyle things to make me feel fulfilled. And I teach on these lifestyle things. I think they are extremely important. However, I noticed still something was missing in my health. And that is where this emotional side comes in. And so I've integrated that into my work and my consultations with women because that is where more healing needs to be done. Because I think we need to feel safe in our body to be able to know ourselves and to be expressive in what we're here to express. And I think a lot of women have trauma. I think a lot of human beings have trauma. I think everybody has these micro traumas or these big traumas, whether we are conscious of it or not, that meld us into the people that we are, that trigger us in certain ways. And I think it's really beautiful to be able to learn how to cope with how our nervous system has dealt with previous experiences. So the women that are coming to me, it's almost like there's a huge disconnect from our mind to our body. We are always in our mind, and I get that. I am as well, and I have developed these skills and these tools to help me bring me back into my body. Have you noticed before, if you are eating a meal and you're working, and maybe your mom calls you, or you're watching television or whatever, and afterwards you feel kind of gassy, you feel like maybe a little bit of bloating happened, and clearly your mind was focused on everything else besides the nourishing food that you were eating. And I think if we experiment and next time we eat, really be intentional with that food. If you are eating, for example, rice or an animal protein and some avocado, for, again, example, really think about the nourishing fibers, the amino acids, the saturated fats, the healthy fats that are going in and nourishing your hormones and your cells and helping your detoxification pathways. If we are able to do that, I would love to then observe how your system feels afterwards. You probably feel completely different, and it goes to show just how powerful we are when we set the intention of what it is. And I think just this world is so darn fast that we have to keep pulling it back and recognize, wait a second, I don't feel good. And so how can I be introspective to really say, well, why is that? Am I scrolling too much on my phone? Am I not taking this time for myself in the morning to set myself up for a good day? Am I in a career that I hate? And it takes a lot of courage and persistence to begin to retrain our minds to be focused. I think the society, we are taught to be this really quick, it's almost like we're being fed with really quick stimulation, and that drains our focus. And I think it's up to us to kind of pull it back. And with my work with women, I'm teaching them to pull it back and to keep pulling it back, as in pulling yourself back into center instead of being all of this outwardly, where it's really disconnecting you from yourself, because I think that's how all of these symptoms come up. It's a disconnection from self. And so these tests, again, validate you to conceptualize, oh, like my progesterone is extremely low right now. No wonder why I'm not able to have a healthy pregnancy, or I had a miscarriage, right? So it's very validating for you to see this visually, but also realize maybe on an emotional level, our hormones, this hormone progesterone is low because I don't feel safe with my partner. I don't feel like they will be a good provider, a good father of this child. And I think it takes a lot of time and persistence. It's almost like we're going deeper, right? It's not as simple as, well, I'm just going to take this progesterone hormone and stay with this person and move forward and try again. I think it's almost like we're smarter than that. We're better than that. It's a lot deeper than that. And I'm the guide to help facilitate going deeper and providing that education.
Yeah, we're thankful for that work, and I'm glad that you highlighted like the mind-body connection, because like I had to observe for myself that like I'm an emotional eater, right? And so I've noticed that every time a stressful thought hits my mind, immediately food comes into the fray, and I'm like, how is it that I've conditioned myself that every time I'm stressed or feel stressed or process stressful thoughts, that food is the next thing, right? Like usually if there's something stressful, if there's something that you know that needs to be solved, usually you try to get to the source of it and deal with it, right? Try to figure it out. But immediately you kind of see the the thing, you kind of see the issue as something that maybe I don't need to deal with that right now. I can just put it off. Maybe I need to grab a bite and, recollect myself. But, I've found that for myself, that's an unhealthy way to try to process whatever stressful thing that I'm dealing with or going through. And kind of speak to that as well, because I know that there are a lot of people, men and women, who are like have emotional responses to their stressors or whatever situation they're going through in life. How typically would you go about helping someone or navigate stressful thoughts, stressful feelings, and what's the best way to deal with that when they're trying to regain their health?
I can also relate to the emotional eating. I remember when I was younger, I would sneak in my room these Pop-Tarts or these sweet treats so my family didn't see. And in 2020, when I was going through a lot of those health symptoms I described, it was like I couldn't get enough of these M&Ms. And it's a coping mechanism, because we don't want to feel the pain of whatever it is in that moment. So it's almost like we try to numb ourselves, or maybe have a stomach, what's it called? Activate an upset stomach for ourselves to not feel the emotional pain. We feel this physical pain from eating too much and feeling bloated and lethargic, whatever, but it's almost like we're masking that emotion because we just don't want to feel it. And I totally get that. I think even last year, I noticed I had gotten out of a relationship that felt so emotionally intense, like death. And I noticed I was at first I wasn't eating in the same fashion. I wasn't really eating much. And then I would try to emotionally cope with dark chocolate chips. So all of my diet is very all organic, grass-fed. So these dark chocolate chips are the highest quality. However, the amount of consumption was large. And so I had to ask myself, what is it that I'm not allowing myself to feel right now? And I did allow this grief, but it was like this persistent sadness that I was just like, okay, enough, almost. And so bringing it back, it's like, wait, that's not actually helping me. And what I have learned through my personal work with practitioners, or my reading of books, or just experimenting on myself, it's almost like I am then educating women to learn how to bring it back to the body and how to feel your feelings, and that it's all temporary, like you said before. Like this pain, this grief, or this sadness is all temporary, and it's almost like through this work and through experimenting with yourself, you're able to grow in your awareness and in your consciousness, that you're like, oh, I'm feeling this overwhelm or this sadness come on. Clearly there's this emotion and this part of me that needs attention and acknowledgement right now. So if you can, and sometimes it's very hard, but if you can create space between this overwhelm and this feeling of unworthiness or this rejection or this grief, if you can create a little bit of space and see yourself observing that emotion, you can say, okay, like let's sit and let's pause. I hear you. What do you need right now? Sometimes, and this is kind of where somatic exercises can come in, where you are bringing yourself back into your body. You're doing specific safety exercises to say, like, I'm here. It's okay for you to feel this way. I totally get it. And I think that might not work, but you are experimenting with yourself. It might work in this scenario, but maybe not something else. Or you might be frustrated that, man, this keeps coming up. What is this? And it's like this gentle, delicate process each time it's coming up. And eventually you are creating new relationship with yourself, with these parts of yourself that need to be acknowledged and felt. And when you start to build that relationship with yourself, you begin to see this emotional coping or this pull to food dissipate. And I learned this about a year and a half, 2 years ago. And again, it like I just mentioned, it came up last year. So it's never going to be perfect, but it's about retraining your mind again. Say, okay, here's another opportunity for me to build this relationship with myself. And so that's all of that I just said is kind of one area. I think if there is emotional eating, and this is a different subject, maybe there's a mineral status that you need to bring up. Because I think, for example, dark chocolate is very healthy for us. It's a healthy antioxidant. It has great magnesium in it. It has copper in it, vitamin A, I believe. And so it's almost like, is your body feeling pulled to that specific food because you're very stressed in your other lifestyle factors where it's like, we need this to help balance something out in here. So I think it can kind of be both or either thing. And that's where these tests are helpful because in my opinion, I wouldn't know if I'm low in vitamin A, for example. I wouldn't know if I'm low in vitamin C or D. And so these tests can help bring to the surface validation of, okay, like maybe my mental state right now or my emotional state right now is exacerbated because of these mineral deficiencies or these low hormones or this parasite, for example, in our gut microbiome. So it's an experiment that I work with women to really, in conjunction, to discover. I think it's never one without the other.
And,
Yeah.
it's interesting because as you were talking about helping women to get in touch with their feelings, and feeling okay with allowing themselves to feel whatever it is that's going on in that moment. And I do find it interesting because typically the way that society structures it or speaks about it is that usually women are very in touch with their feelings, right? And that men are usually not very in touch with their feelings, that women who have a difficult time accessing their feelings are probably operating in the masculine. And I guess my question now is twofold. Like, because I know personally, like when it comes to my feelings, I remember my wife was asking me how I felt, and I kept providing words that were kind of describing the moment and the situation rather than what my actual feeling was. And I noticed that, wow, I actually have a difficult time actually finding feeling words to describe how I feel, right? And so I want to know to what extent that you've seen that there's been a decline in women who feel comfortable accessing their feelings, and if there's at the time that you've been doing this work, have you seen a decline there? And then, in what important aspects of women's health has this, impaired women's health experience, maybe affecting things like pregnancy or regular periods, or like, can you speak to that on those two fronts?
Yes, I feel like society and how women have kind of changed their role in how we show up in society. Women are very much upcoming in these leadership roles, and it's a lot of structure and a lot of masculinity that it's coming through. And I think that's the point. It's almost like we're taking the woman out of the family dynamic, and maybe a nanny or the school is watching the kids, and the women are beginning to lead. And I think there's nothing wrong with leading, but it's almost like there's a pull to really cause some chaos in the family, cause some weakness in the family. And I think there's a lot of, like even within myself, wanting to explore creating a business, there's a lot of masculine energy that needs to be put out, because it's like, okay, I have a podcast here and I have to get ready, or I have this client call, and it's very structured, or with email lists and etc. And I think if we're not conscious of it, it's like we begin to lead with that. And I see it, and we begin to get burnt out. I see a lot of women getting burnt out because they're trying so hard to push and go. And I don't think our physiology is meant for that. We need to take those pauses. We need to do different training styles. Our hormones are just not built for that and for that stress. And I know there's a lot of metabolism issues that come up. And, you know, when you think of metabolism, think of the thyroid. And so how many women have maybe undiagnosed hypothyroidism, but metabolism issues, and they feel like they can't express themselves. It's almost like society is telling you to be this certain way, or this good girl, or this, you got it, or this, this masculine girl, like you got it, like go into the engineering field, even though you're like one of the few women in that field. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. But I think if we can take a look at how we're showing up or why we're showing up that way. And I think a lot of it is just we don't feel safe from the masculine that we were brought up with. It could be like learned from our mom being in her masculine, or from our dad not being in this leadership role. So it's like we didn't get to see some healthy masculine feminine dynamics. And so it's honestly, we're just picking up what we've been taught. And again, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's also like, let's take a reflection of, is that actually serving you? There was a woman that I worked with that she wasn't able to get pregnant. And I remember she wasn't able to get pregnant naturally. And I remember having these consultations with her, and very in the masculine. It's almost like she wasn't able to kind of soften, and she didn't quite take the emotional work seriously. She was very much, okay, like tell me what the supplements to take. This is going to be good. In 3 months, I'm going to be able to get pregnant. And I think that needs to soften. That needs to change, because it's not, it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. And I totally get that it is challenging to soften, because we don't want to feel pain. And that's why we're hardened, because we felt pain. We're like, nope, we're cutting this off. This is not going to happen again. And I totally get it, but it's almost like we're constricting ourselves from being ourselves, from radiating this feminine essence to support the masculine and becoming more of who he's meant to be too. So it's almost like we have to cultivate this courage to soften daily, minute by minute. And it's an ever unfolding process. So I think I might have swayed a little bit from your question. But what was the second half of the question? Because I would love to dive into that.
Well, the second half was actually like looking at what specific functions of women's health you've seen be impacted by women not being able to access those feelings. But I think you kind of answered it when you spoke about a woman who had a difficult time, becoming pregnant, and she wasn't actually embracing, her femininity, just, and embracing her feelings and everything. So I think that was helpful. But I mean, if you want to go a little bit deeper, that's fine.
I think there's a big need to really be supportive for each other. I think whether, again, we're going to kind of past experiences of women's relationship with other women. And I think there can be some competition or conflict there or there's like a sister wound there where it's almost like I imagine expansive growth happening when women are supporting women and radiating their wildness and their sadness and their grief. And it's like being able to witness other women going through the fire, if you will, and just being encouraging. I think that is a powerful transformational tool that I would love to continue to cultivate with other women, because I think just being witnessed in a personal setting when I was working with a practitioner, like that was transformative. And I noticed that with my own work on this level and getting to know these parts of myself, I'm able to shift from more of a sympathetic state. So it's almost like I'm running from a tiger, or in that go state, or maybe it could be considered like this masculine structure state, to more of like a downward shift to a parasympathetic, where we're able to calm and soften and the rest and the digestive state. So I think it's important to know or learn these tools to regulate yourself, to regulate your nervous system, so you can become more flexible. So if you need to go into the sympathetic state where you need to get something done or something happened in your life, like you can go do that, and then you could shift back down. It's almost like being able to be flexible. And I think with our past traumas, with how society is just pushing us where we need to work longer hours, or we need to, inflation is just very much increased. So it's like, I can't pay the water bill, or I can't do this or whatever. It's kind of like there's so much stress and there's so much pressure that we just harden because we are losing trust in how the universe can help support and guide us. And I think if we can learn these tools to bring us back into our body, to know that we are infinite beings, to know that God or Source always has our back and is supportive. It doesn't mean that when we go through challenging times, that's not going to happen. Certainly it's going to happen, but it's like just coming back into self and knowing like all of this is for a reason. Something is trying to get my attention when these health symptoms come up, and it's my job to pay attention to them. And I've had to learn the hard way that everybody has traumas, everybody has health issues. Health is never perfect. And I think it's been a hard hit for me to say, well, I'm a functional health practitioner. I need to have my health in pristine condition, or I'm a personal trainer. I need to have the most cut physique. And it's just not reality. And I think that's a perfectionism type of pattern that we need to take a deeper look at too. So yeah, I think I might be done with that comment. I kind of went on a tangent there, but it does take a lot of persistence to just keep going deeper and keep seeing like behind the veil, if you will, like behind the matrix, behind the curtain, and getting to know like what's actually inside. And with those somatic techniques, I even use sound healing as well to help kind of calm the nervous system down, to help shift some stagnant energy that's in our system. When we keep doing that, we can transform our health. And that might seem strange to say, like sound can really like help my health. And it's true. Everything we can look at as energy. The food that we're eating is energy. The conversation that we're having here, I'm passing energy to you, you're passing energy to me. The air, obviously, is energy. Our heartbeat is producing an energy. And so sound itself is an energy. And so if we are able to introduce these techniques, the somatics, the sound, just different mindfulness techniques, I have really seen transformation in my own health, but also clients' health, to just be elated in this bliss and this joy, to be able to feel ourselves again. And I think those are the moments of why I do what I do, because it's like, yep, I saw the light bulb go off there, and it's just extremely beautiful. So I would just say, honestly, I encourage women to keep softening, to keep connecting with our heart, because I think that can speak volumes to knowing how to express yourself. Like you said, you were saying these feeling words, but you weren't feeling these words. It's almost like, well, can we get inside of our body so we can feel what our heart is actually trying to express?
I know this might be a bit random, but I know you did touch on thyroid health and adrenal health, and I I just want to share. Hopefully, my mom is okay with me sharing this. But she's had some thyroid issues in the past. She had a major operation back in like the late '90s, 2000, where she had to remove like I think they call it a goiter or like a growth in her throat, and it was linked to like her thyroid, really either being overactive or whatever the specific cause was. And I'm not sure how significant of an issue this is, particularly for women's health, but can you also maybe speak about or highlight what you've seen in terms of women's thyroid health, adrenal health, and maybe ways that they can combat or battle those issues?
Yeah, great question. I think when we are in this stressful state, or again, when we're in this masculine, or we're in these big leadership roles, again, we're not meant for that. However, we're burning through our hormones. So our adrenal glands are up and running constantly, and our thyroid is trying to keep up. So the thyroid is kind of like our master generator or master hormone. The generator comes in with the adrenal glands. So they're not supposed to be clicked on 24/7. They're just, if we need to run from a tiger metaphorically, they're supposed to click on. And so we're zooming. However, we're always zooming from society. And so that can't keep happening. So eventually we have this, I'm sure you've heard of adrenal fatigue. We have this burnout happening where our cortisol is extremely low. We feel chronically fatigued. We are just not able to have the same punch in the day. We can't even really think that clearly. Maybe we have some brain fog going on. So when we look at thyroid health, every single cell in our body has a thyroid hormone receptor. And there's multiple hormones that we can look at for thyroid. Our thyroid produces this inactive form called T4. And so for it to become active, it needs to be converted. Majority of it is in the liver. It needs to be converted to T3. So when we look at in T3, then it can get into our cells. So we can have the energy, the good metabolism, the good sleep, the nicer hair. Our hair isn't abnormally falling out. So when kind of this gets dysfunctional, it's just stress. I think it all comes back to stress. If we're just too stressed, our body cannot keep up. So if, for example, we are just forced to be in a higher stress state for a period of time, say, wow, like I have a work project, for example, I really need to work hard for these 2 months. It's going to be, I know it's going to be stressful. You can kind of plan ahead for yourself and say, I'm going to up my magnesium. I'm going to up my vitamin A to support my health, my vitamin C. And because when we're pushing, we're burning through more minerals. So we need more. There is such thing as called a magnesium burn rate. And so whether you feel like you're getting sick or whether you feel like you're high stress, I take more magnesium, and I recommend that for my clients because it helps to continue to produce ATP, like have our cells continue to produce this energy. So I think if we're not aware of this, or there's too much stress, and after those 2 months of that work project, you keep going, like you don't kind of come back and recover, like that's when these symptoms can happen, where it is burnout, where it is like a thyroid concern, where our metabolism is just really messed up. And I think it does take a lot of, it's almost like this tumbling effect or this snowball effect. So it takes a lot of time to come back from that. And maybe your adrenals won't be ever again what they once were. It's almost like when you fall over the cliff, it takes a heck of a long time to come back from it. But you can, certainly. It just takes persistence and diligence. So with the thyroid, there is an intricate connection to how we express ourselves. So if maybe we're in a leadership role where we're competing with a lot of men, maybe we could feel constricted where we can't express ourselves. because we're a bit concerned about how they might come back or whatever the case. And so over time, maybe you feel this physical sensation around your thyroid where it feels constricted. I've had this happen to me twice in jobs. It's actually like a frog was in my throat. Like it was like kind of closed, and I wasn't sick or anything like that. However, after I left the job, it opened up. So it was like, what boundary wasn't I upholding? And where was I trying to people please or coddle or, trying to serve everyone out there and forgetting about myself? It's almost like we abandon ourselves sometimes. So I think that can lead to thyroid issues. And who is talking about that? If you go to a thyroid specialist, for example, or just your physician, and they run the typical TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, and say if it's in range, well, you're okay. You just get sent home. However, there's so many other markers that the thyroid should be looked into, and you should look into the emotional health of why you're experiencing this. Again, every symptom that you have, these are messengers for you to take a deeper look at. I think the biological piece and the emotional piece are very intricately connected, more so than maybe some of us can understand. I know sometimes it blows my mind of just how maybe, let's go back to the conversion of the T4 to T3, having it be in the liver. The liver converts this for you. And so if you're having trouble with converting, what is your liver health? And the emotion that, I think there's several emotions, but one emotion that comes up with the liver is anger. So say if you're not able to being healthy express your anger, that's, it's kind of getting repressed. So again, you're not using your voice to express yourself in this anger. And it's not to say you need to yell at somebody or whatever. There's absolutely healthy ways to express your anger. But if you're not doing it, your liver is impacted. So it's like this connection between these organs here and our emotions. So if we can work on the emotional body, it very much impacts our metabolism and our thyroid health. And I've even heard that the tissue that's in our thyroid is very similar to the tissue that our yoni has. So it's almost like there's a sexual connection between expressing ourself and again, our sexuality. So again, that's another thing to kind of explore, to say, do I have past traumas in my sexuality? What is my belief about my sexuality? And, it's beautiful of how intricately connected the body is. And I think it's a never unfolding journey. So if you feel like your throat is constricted, is your yoni also constricted? And that's what being functional, or the functional space, is all about. It's all about this integrative approach. It's like all the parts that we're trying to bring back into harmony. So I hope that was helpful, and just like your question with the thyroid.
No, it was definitely helpful, and I've used the context clues to figure out the yoni. I guess I didn't know what that was before, but I think a lot of women who are listening to podcasts probably do. But it's interesting to see that connection because it's starting to become more apparent, and I think even science is starting to realize it, that we're probably more spiritual beings than we are physical, right? Or at least there's a certain balance, because it appears that a lot of the ailments or good things that happen to us physiologically are very much linked to how we are emotionally processing a lot of the things that we're going through. And so I like the fact that you pointed this out, because I can think of so many things where people say oh, this person was significantly stressed, this woman was so stressed that it led to this or led to that. And, we're in I feel like our world's gotten more chaotic within the last couple of years. And, women are also, both men and women are having to process a more chaotic world, a more unsafe world. And in a space where it feels like maybe they're not getting the support that they need in this already very entropic, very chaotic world, that what can I do to pull my strength back to really regain a stronghold? And as what you were saying here really helps, I think, women to recenter themselves and know that, like, hey, this, even though you feel like everything is falling down around you, like, try to really reconnect with yourself, try to really reconnect with everything in nature, so that things kind of feel more in control, things feel more in flow. And so that's really interesting, a really interesting perspective. And I think that the more and more that we continue to do science into the ways that nature is able to help us heal, I think that it's going to be, we're going to consistently see where the things that we so often want to label as pseudoscientific and not, helpful in a therapeutic way to heal us of all these different ailments, that maybe there is that maybe the answer to these solutions to these issues is looking at who we really are as spiritual beings and trying to deal with our issues from the inside out.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's such an opportunity for us to do that, right? I know it can be extremely challenging, but how beautiful that we get to do this.
Because we are running out of time, but I definitely will like to have you back to maybe go into some more issues, more, I guess, pointed issues, and maybe some questions. And I think what I will do is to put some questions out there for the audience, so that or maybe ask the audience to give some questions, so maybe we can delve into that next time. But really, I guess at this moment, I usually give the guests the opportunity to let people know where they can find their work. I also wanted to give you the opportunity, because I know you did do some work within in the book as well. You did have a book. There's a editorial of different essays. And I know we really don't have a lot of time to get into it, but you can definitely speak about that book here, and also on social media where people can find you as well.
Yeah, thank you. So the book that came out September of 2023, it's called Shout It from the Rooftops. And it's a collection of these powerful stories, and each author has their own chapter. So what I wrote about is some of my personal experiences, what led me to here, and what I would recommend women to do if they ultimately feel kind of unfulfilled. They feel like their light is not turned on. They feel like they have these physical issues or these emotional concerns to come up. I give pieces towards the end of the chapter of what you can do. And there is a beautiful QR code that you can scan that brings you to a meditation that I create to really enhance the chapter. So you can find that on Amazon. You can buy the Kindle version or the paperback, but all of the proceeds actually go to a company that's called Tappan Consulting. And they are a company that helps human beings that have been humanly trafficked before. They help them to kind of recover, help them find their voice again. So us as a collective group of women chose that to just support. So you can find that again on Amazon. Really, anywhere you can find books, you should be able to find it. But if you would like to have a deeper conversation, I am available whenever. discover@falynmorningstar.com is my email. My Instagram is @falynmorningstar. So either one of those two avenues, I am very open to having a conversation and seeing if there could be opportunity to support each other. But thank you for holding this space today and for having me on here. I will say one thing I would actually suggest women to do if they're just looking to start somewhere. They can breathe. They can just breathe and take that pause. It is quite significant, and it can be a minute. It could be 3 minutes, but taking that pause really brings you back into the present moment rather than sucked into whatever you're doing. So that is where I've seen the most expansion in my life, is when I take that pause. And that could be, you could pause for a meditation. You could pause for just a deep breathing session where you're breathing into your stomach and letting it out through your mouth or through your nose. So just that, completely free for you to do, that will significantly help you in where to start. So I just wanted to add that as a tail end piece. But
No, and I appreciate that. And, it's really important for us to take a break. And I think a lot of, and I would say, introspective break, right? A lot of people in the world, when the pandemic happened, when the shutdown happened, everyone was like, I'm glad I didn't want to stop working, but I do like the fact that I got a moment to just, sit back, try to figure out what was going on, spend more time with family, and just like reconnect. But I that's definitely something that is really pivotal to our mental health and to us, not just our mental health as we saw today, but our overall health. Really being able to truly connect with who we are and what we feel. But Falyn, again, thank you for really being a guest on our show today. And again, for those listening to On iTunes Health, that we always make the appeal to make health personal and to, be okay with being yourself. Really help. It's really helpful for us to tap into who we really are. And, I just will consistently make that appeal to you to really make health personal, to really see what's going on, and to really reconnect with not just yourself, but people in your life who are poured into you in a healthy way. So I hope you guys have a great one. I hope this podcast was definitely insightful and helpful. And I hope to see you guys next week.